Hey, what's up, guys? This is Reed Young, aka Shuda. I'm gonna go through a hand that was posted in middle stakes no limit on the popular poker thread or poker site 2+2. In this hand, there's a pretty common situation that I see happening to a lot of people who go from small stakes to mid stakes, or people who just grind mid stakes and aren't really used to deeper stacked play. So in deeper stack play, typically the hands you want to get a lot of money in, especially on the flop, are going to be a lot stronger because you have to be worried about, the cost to reward ratio of what's going on. And there aren't many hands that have enough equity to stand the heat against a reasonable range that an opponent will have. So that said, I think a lot of people end up playing way too passively deep stacked when they really could be getting away with a lot of nice bluffs and consequently thinner value bets. So instead of making your range easy to read, you want to include some bluffs. And in this hand, you guys can see the hero raises on the cutoff, the button folds, small blind 3 bets, and we call. Since we're 240 big blinds deep or thereabouts, you can pretty much justify calling with anything. With 6-7 suited, pretty much ecstatic to see a flop and do some damage. So we smashed this flop Hulk style and got an open-ended straight flush draw. Our opponent continuation bets 2/3 pot into us, I guess about exactly, and that pretty much tells me he's a regular and probably has some sort of like auto hotkey script since he's betting the exact cent amount. That's nice information to have. What's also nice is the ace of clubs is on the board, and it's one of the 2 clubs on the board, that give us a flush draw. So the cool thing about that is we can raise and not be worried about facing a top pair and flush draw type hand, which is really one of the only hands that could get us into trouble here. So if our opponent has a hand like king queen of clubs that he re-raised with preflop, he's probably not at least going to go insane on the flop and try to get in 240 big blinds deep. So we're not worried about that hand so much. We can play pretty well in position anyway, and we are deep enough to kind of roll with the punches. So our opponent continuation bets, and he's probably doing this a little bit too wide, just given that it's an ace-high flop and we're deep stacked. Now pre-flop, his re-raising range could be quite narrow here, and therefore fairly strong on this board relative to maybe if we're 80 big blinds effective pre-flop, we might have a lot more hands like king 10 offsuit or something like that. So we get continuation bet into, and the player who posted the hand just calls, which I think is a mistake. Obviously, calling the flop is good in that it's plus EV, but I think raising is better for a lot of reasons, and here's why. So we're still going to realize our equity. Like I said, there aren't many hands that can re-raise us on the flop, and the ones that do, we're not even worried about facing because we have an open-ended straight flush draw. So really nothing bad can happen there. Also, this deep, it's just so difficult for our opponent to continue and to play well against our aggression out of position and with a 1-pair hand. So if he does have a hand like ace jack of diamonds and feels like he needs to continuation bet this flop because he's doing it with so much of his air, we can kind of take that idea that maybe he's used to incorporating in his game 100 big blinds deep, and there's certainly no problem with it, and turn it on its head because now we're 240 big blinds deep, and it's really a different game with different ranges. Because to get in a ton of money on this flop, it's going to be really tough for our opponent to be doing well with 1-pair. And on the other side of the hand where we are, it's going to be tough for us to have a lot of hands we want to raise for value. So when we do raise as a bluff or a semi-bluff, we want to have some equity to back it up. Usually that's a good idea with any bluff that you make. Here, this is one of the best hands you could possibly be semi-bluff raising with, so I think it's a good idea to do it. He just calls on the flop. I don't like it. That said, like after we get to the turn, this is kind of where he posts, where he's like confused with the hand. but I think the mistake is on the flop. Once we're check 2 on the turn, he's trying to decide whether or not to check back. I think it's an easy bet because we're not going to win at showdown that often, and more importantly, because we're not going to get check raised on the turn, really ever. Even if we do, we're fine bet calling, because I think the most likely hand we're against is something like ace queen that's just trying to get cute, and then we have enough equity against that to call it off and hope that we hit the river, or call and then play the river, play poker on the river, I guess, as they say, if we are unimproved, and obviously call it off if we make a flush or a straight, or, maybe even two pair. So the reads on this opponent are that he's aggressive and potentially spewy, and basically saying that he's worried about getting check raised on the turn. I don't think it's a concern, especially with such a strong hand. But the important thing that you guys should take from this hand is that it's tempting to play more passively deeper stacked, because you do need a stronger range to play, to continue with a lot of your hands. And it's tempting to take that idea and kind of, hide in your little shell and not pop out unless you have the nuts. It makes it really easy to play against you. It makes it really easy to bet fold on this flop if you're against a straightforward thinking player. So what you want to do is add a lot of hands like this that have equity and go from there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about it, feel free to post in the comment, and like the video if you would. It helps spread the videos throughout the YouTube. I appreciate you guys watching. Take care.